Right, so retro video game graphics have been making quite a comeback these days, especially because of the independent game development scene. Pixel art has become one of the primary ways to make graphics for your homebrew game projects. And that's for good reason, I suppose, because making really chunky, pixely graphics is a nice and easy way to trick people into thinking that your game looks good. And it triggers this sort of nostalgic reaction with people, like the good old days or some shit like that. But it doesn't really make your game look good per se. So, hi, I'm Paul. I'm a freelance animator. And I'm here to tell you to put some effort into your retro graphics. I'm going to use a few games as examples, and one of them is Super Crate Box, which I worked on. So, Super Crate Box is a very retro-inspired game. You shoot, you kill, you collect, and you score. And graphically, it's inspired by games of that same era. But the keyword here is inspired. Super Crate Box is not an 8-bit game, even though it makes you think that it is. People have these very vivid memories of old games with Mario, Link, or Samus. And look at these games now, though. They're still like really good and leaps and bounds above anything else coming out today in terms of gameplay. But graphically, they're not so pretty anymore. This is not how you remember them. Fuck, I lost my trail of thought here. Basically, my point here is that because people remember these games so well, they do think that these games are really well animated. But try explaining that to somebody who's really fond of an old game, like Super Mario World for SNES. I'm sure some of you have played that here. What most of you probably don't remember is that Mario animated like shit in that game. So, anybody who played Super Mario World as a kid and hasn't studied the game since will think Mario was this like crazy animated character full of life. Well, he wasn't. Just look at his sprite strip. This is like all of his animations in a single image. There's like three frame walk cycles and stuff like that. It's ridiculous. But because people remember these games so fondly, anybody making pixel art these days will use them as an example for making their art. And what you get then is really badly animated games where the player will think, this is not at all like I remember it. And that's not what you want. You want your player to think, this is exactly like I remember it. So how do you accomplish that? That's pretty easy. Let's take an example here. This is a game that came out recently that has a really old school style. It's called Pilgrim vs. the World. And I'm not going to get into technical pixel art bullshit about why this game is not 8-bit, because we don't have time for that. But what I will show you is how the Scott Pilgrim team tricks people into thinking that they're playing a game that could have been made in the late 80s. So, Scott Pilgrim is a very old school game. It's a very obvious homage to River City Ransom, where the objective is the same. You beat up guys, you take their money, you buy new skills, you finish the level, rinse and repeat. Scott Pilgrim was nothing different there. But it's a good formula, it makes for a fun game. But graphically, Scott Pilgrim does a lot different. The team has put a lot of effort into all these animations. So all the characters in Scott Pilgrim have a lot more personality than all those old games like River City Ransom. Every animation in Scott Pilgrim has a minimum of 4 to 6 frames. And most of the time it's even more than that. And that combination of old school game design and aesthetics with modern animation triggers some kind of reaction with people that makes them remember like the old games, and that's why they think what they're playing is an old game. And Super Crate Box does the same thing. It's a very old school arcade game with a look and feel that complements that. But animation-wise, we're not half-assing it. So let's take a look at one of the monsters in the game. This is his walk cycle, and it's 12 frames of animation for a character that's no bigger than 20 by 20 pixels. That's incredibly small, but what these 12 frames do is give him a walk that is very slow and very menacing and feels threatening to the player. If he had less frames, he would have been choppy and silly. And this is another character that I personally really like. This is the female character in Super Crate Box, and she's only 12 by 12 pixels, which is ridiculous. But I decided to animate her hair when she bounces up and down to give her that much more personality. And why did I do these things? Because this is how we remember all those old characters. We remember Link's sword feeling incredibly powerful when he took a swing at an enemy, or Samus transforming into the morph ball really nice and smooth, even though it was like 1 frame of animation. So, to get back to my original question, which is why should you put some effort into your retro graphics, it's because the memories we have of those games are much prettier than what they actually were. And as a designer of retro graphics, you should keep those memories alive instead of shoving the truth into people's faces. So, I hope I taught you something during this small talk, and that's my website and Twitter. Thanks.